Today on the Unveil podcast, I have the privilege and pleasure of sitting down with a fellow precision wellness epigenetic coach, Abby Hand, MSN. Abby is a preconception health consultant and soon to be published author, specializing in helping women and couples prepare for pregnancy through positive lifestyle change and health optimization. Abby supports clients using current research, traditional medicine, and natural philosophies. Additionally, she incorporates biometric tracking, epigenetic data, and other valuable tools into her complex systems approach to coaching. She also draws on her own autoimmune disease and pregnancy experiences to empower folks and help them navigate the quagmire surrounding perinatal and chronic disease care. Abby believes that optimizing the health of both parents prior to conception helps build strong families and communities, creating a healthier, more resilient world. And we talk about all of this in detail on today's episode. I really enjoyed getting to geek out with someone who's in a similar world to me, but also talk about her specific niche and exactly how she helps both parents look at every element of their lifestyle in a perfectly precise, specific way to support them and therefore the health of their unborn child. This is a perfect complement to last week's episode, and I hope that you enjoy this exploration of the epigenetic world of preconception and conception with Abby Hand. I'm so delighted to get into this conversation today. Yet another epigenetic coach and precision wellness expert on my podcast, and a local one at that, someone who's hanging out in Austin, Texas. And for the benefit of our listeners, for the benefit of our listeners, even Abby, why don't you give us just the 30,000-foot view of who you are and what you do and what your kind of current passion is? And I know that we're going to go everywhere today, but let's start there and we can move on.
So I'm Abby Hand. I'm a preconception health consultant. I have a very niche market here in Austin, Texas, and virtually. Um, kind of in a nutshell, I help folks optimize their health before getting pregnant, before trying to get pregnant, even. Um, and that can lead down a bunch of different paths. I'm also an epigenetic coach through the Apeiron um, tribe. So I do a lot of the epigenetic piece too, and I think that it's really foundational. It's a really great lens to focus the more physical aspects of what I'm trying to do with people. So that's the foundational health aspects: the sleep, the nutrition, the micronutrients and supplementation, those kind of physical aspects that a lot of us are doing in the health and wellness space. Um, Another large piece of what I'm doing and I'm really passionate about is the advocacy and the navigation piece. Um, Pregnancy, preconception, conception, fertility, all of these things are very complicated and they come with a very complex um, network quagmire, if you will, of care, of providers, of testing, of there's it's just a whole new world, it's a whole new language. And when I found myself in this space, I had a lot of questions, even as a nurse, even as someone with a master's in maternity nursing who worked in labor and delivery. I still had so many questions about how to navigate this new land. And so I really am excited and passionate about helping people understand where they are, what their options are. I have a very soapboxy, die on my hill platform about informed consent and really helping people to understand what are the risks of this, what are the alternatives, and really bringing in my nurse education and experience on top of that foundational health and wellness piece. So I think that's a space that I kind of have a unique platform here.
Mhm.
Um, and I also bring in kind of my own health experience, my own health navigation, walking through autoimmune diagnosis, and then walking through, what does it look like to be in autoimmune remission through pregnancy? Because that's a totally ambiguous area. So, 35,000-foot view, I help people optimize their health before trying to get pregnant and
Mhm.
also navigate this crazy landscape of preconception, pregnancy, and the postpartum period.
Mm. Which is super niche, but also super necessary. It's, there's there's so much of this which feels like nobody gives you a rule book, and
Right.
you end up just following the blind route of being funneled into a system.
Yep.
So I love that there are advocates out there like yourself, or even just you. I don't know very many of them. But what I love, like, to understand is, like, why this? And normally I don't get to this point until further down the podcast interview landscape, but I'd really love to get into that first. It's like you mentioned a couple of things about your own experience being a nurse and feeling like you should know what to do, but still having questions. What was your kind of, why did this become the thing that was your passion?
So, and that's kind of a complex answer. I have kind of two parallel and intertwining paths that led me to where I am. And one is my personal story, and one is my professional story. Um, so, I guess professionally, I had the opportunity to become an EMT in college, and that kind of um, introduced me to body systems and healthcare, and helping people in that capacity. I was a geology major with a focus kind of on environmental science. And so I was very much connected to the land and connected to our resources, and kind of the relationship between um, nature and humans, and
Mm.
how we can improve that relationship. And then this EMT thing came along, and I was like, well, that's interesting. So I did that, and that led to doing public health, global medicine work, and that led to, oh, nursing. Nursing is the way that I should be going.
Mm.
So after college, I came back to Austin, which is my home base. I'm born and raised here. And I set on the path doing my prerequisites and working as a medical assistant and really getting experience there. Um, that led into a fast track nursing program. So I got my RN license in 12 months at UT here in Austin, into my master's, and everything just kind of like led into one thing after another. But then I found myself in a spot where my personal health was starting to catch up with me. I was in my mid 20s. At 26, I had what I call the big event. And that was, I was at work, and I started having some kind of visual disturbances. I kind of ignored it, kind of came back, kind of had this like weird squiggly thing in my vision. I was like, oh, I don't know what that is. Um, but I don't really have time to deal with it.
Right.
Kept working, right? I mean, that's kind of how we're conditioned to do. Just ignore it until we get home, and maybe
Mhm.
we'll address it if we remember.
Mhm.
And then later in that day, I started getting numbness and tingling in my hand. It traveled up my arm. I lost vision. I started slurring my words.
Oh
Luckily, I
gosh.
was in a medical setting.
Mhm.
Um, so I had help there immediately, and I had people who loved me and were concerned about me. And so obviously, I thought I had a stroke at 26, and that was terrifying. But all the testing said that I was fine, which, as grateful as you are when you get a negative result like that, you're still left with a lot of questions.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's kind of started my autoimmune journey. I was sent to, all sorts of specialists, and no one really knew what was going on for a while. And then it took, you know, the average time to diagnosis is like 5 years, I think, and I think mine was about 6 years, and I, eventually came away with a diagnosis of lupus and started on that pathway, which I am very grateful for. It was a very conventional approach to treatment, and I think it was very necessary. And also, I got into a point in my professional life where I was more focused in the functional medicine sphere. I got into precision health and the epigenetics. And I realized that the conventional path was not for me, that it was lacking in so many areas, that there was no conversation about lifestyle. And we know now in 2022, and we should have known back in 20, whenever that was,
Mm.
2015 maybe. the potent effects of lifestyle, especially stress. And I know that you are kind of an expert here in the effects on the nervous system and in every other area that that nervous system touches,
Mm.
right? And understanding that there was a better way for me to go. And so I started really just absorbing all the information that was available to me in the functional health realm, um, and looking at my epigenetics and figuring out a targeted way that I could manage my lupus. And in 2018, um, I was able to come off all of my meds, off of a lot of my supplements too, and it really just reinforced to me that this is important and that this is lacking, even I think within kind of the alternative health space. I didn't think that there was necessarily enough guidance there.
Mhm.
So at that point, I started coaching and I started working with autoimmune clients and really focusing on dietary interventions, Wall's protocol, and paleo, and Whole30, and helping clients use nutrition and lifestyle to really support, whether that was in conjunction with a more conventional path, um, but really help bring people back to the roots of health and flourish in a way that they weren't under standard medical care. And that's only part of the story. So from
Mm.
there, I was at actually an Apeiron conference here in Austin,
Mhm.
and
So many people were at that Apeiron
I
conference, by
know,
the way. The amount of people who keep saying, "Oh yeah, we met at the Apeiron conference," and I'm like,
right?
"I missed out. I was not here."
Oh, yeah, it was great. It was, I mean, for me, it was revelational on two accounts because A, that's where I talked to Dan, and he's like, "Do you know any nurses who are looking for part-time work?" And I was like, "Oh,
Dan
this
does
girl
that.
is, yeah, no, this is wonderful." Because when
I
I
should
met,
just actually, I should just give our listeners a little context. The Dan that we reference is Dan Stickler, Dr. Dan Stickler, who's the head of Apeiron, who did the same to me and went, "Are you maybe interested in like doing some clinic work, Victoria?" And he's the reason I ended up here at Kuya. So he has a thing of like spotting people who he thinks have something and also get his systems mentality. And it
yeah,
sounds like just from your history with just the nuggets that you shared thus far, and myself too, going on that personal journey where you have to take those steps back to do the systems, complex systems thinking. He recognizes when somebody can converse in that language and goes, yeah, you're the person.
right,
So that this is very Dan contextual. So
yeah.
return to your story. Sorry, I was
So crazy. Well, and it's funny too because I got to go to A4M
Mhm.
in December of 2018, and that's where I met Dan and Micra,
Mm.
and I saw what they were doing, and I was like, "Yes, this
Mhm.
is what I need to be doing."
Yeah.
Um, I was already in another coaching program, and true to my form, I was like, "All right, let's at it, let's do it."
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, that's when I was introduced to them and kind of changed my life. Really
Mm.
focused, really helped me like pivot from the shotgun approach of managing my lupus to a
Yeah.
very targeted and focused and more efficient
Yes.
way of looking at that complex systems
Sure.
approach.
Hmm.
Um, and I found out that they, were Austin based and they had a medical center, and I was like, I am going to work for them. And then 2 years later, I ran into them again, and they're like, "Yeah, you need a job?" And I was like, "Yes, I do." And it was so fun. I loved working at their clinic.
Hmm.
Sad that sad that I had to step away from that, but,
Mm.
definitely for the best. A good experience
Mhm.
there. Um,
Mm.
but at that conference, I kind of had an epiphany. I realized that I wasn't connecting all the dots. I wasn't
Mhm.
working to my full. I wasn't utilizing my education
Mhm.
as well as I could be.
Mhm.
I worked in labor and delivery here in Austin. Didn't have the best experience, to be
Mhm.
honest.
Mhm.
Um, Part of that is because I was considering becoming a midwife, and
Mhm.
I saw how the midwives were treated within that hospital system, and wasn't a huge fan.
Mm.
Um, B, I was this was a second career for me. So I was
Mm.
older coming in. I
Mm.
already had my lupus established, and I recognized that that was not tenable. I could not. I couldn't work 12-hour shifts overnight. That was
No.
just setting my nervous system on fire,
Yeah.
honestly. Um, and it just wasn't the path for me. And the hospital and I had a lot of conflicting values. So
Yeah.
I stepped away from that, and that's when I went into functional medicine. But I took away a lot of really valuable information from working in the hospital and having my master's in maternity nursing. I just felt I wasn't using all of my tools. And so it was
Mhm.
at that conference that I kind of had an epiphany and realized that, I've been talking about preconception health, was kind of hesitant to go that way because I had never been pregnant. I never experienced anything like that. And I kind of felt like an imposter stepping into that space.
Mhm.
Um, and talking out with a lot of cool appear people, bouncing ideas off, really cemented that that's the direction that I needed to go.
Mhm.
So that's kind of how I entered the preconception. That's at least where the light bulb went off. Um,
Mm.
a month later, the first week of lockdown here in Austin, I found out I was pregnant.
Oh my
So
goodness.
I think the universe really like heard me and
Uh-huh.
was like, "Oh, you're talking about this. You're ready. Okay, so let's go."
Wow.
Um, so crazy time. Um, I didn't know if we could go to the pharmacy, so I ordered pregnancy tests through Amazon. Like that's where we were at. We were at
Yes.
the phase, where people were like wiping
Mm.
down their groceries and stuff.
Yes,
Like
and everyone
we,
was, like, not bringing their mail in for, like, days.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
we had
That
like no
stage.
idea what was going on at that point, and I was pregnant. And to be honest, it was a surprise to us.
Right.
So it was a crazy, crazy time, and
Mm.
that's kind of caveat, like, that's one of the reasons that preconception health is so important is
Yeah.
because 50% of pregnancies are surprises.
Yeah.
They are not planned.
Yep.
And so it is so important, like, if you are even, like, if there's even a twinge of thought of pregnancy, it's beneficial just to act as if that is your path and to support your health in that
Mm.
capacity.
Mm.
Just
Mhm.
be prepared. And
Mm.
because it benefits not only if you do get pregnant, but also every other aspect in your life,
Yeah.
right? I know you say everything matters, and that is, I mean, everything matters.
Yes.
It doesn't matter what period of life you're in, it doesn't matter where you are in life, everything matters.
Mm.
So, after my amazing pregnancy, I was the healthiest I had ever been in my adult life. I had a beautiful pregnancy, I had a beautiful delivery,
Mm.
and a relatively uneventful postpartum period. Um, and after I came out of that, I really started focusing on um, working with clients to help them have the same experience that I had.
Wow. And I think it's one of those things where when you're moving through the stuff that you technically get wrong, it was a surprise and all the
Yeah,
things, you're like, oh, this could have been better. And then I think when you're in our world, you create the structure around which you want to help other people have a better experience or have the same experience and then 10x it or whatever it is
yeah,
when you have the knowledge. And I think it's really interesting the epiphany that you spoke about, that kind of, I realized I wasn't using all of my skill set, my education. I think it's really common in this kind of wellness industry that we niche too soon and we find the niche protocol or the niche approach. And you mentioned a few of them, like the Walls protocol, the paleo
yeah,
diet, the and kind of at the time when we were all doing those things, we were just like going, well, mechanistically,
yeah,
this makes sense from a
right.
dietary perspective.
Yep. Or like, this is something that I have experience in, and it's something that, I have a couple of referral sources, and so this is the way I'm gonna go because these are the people that are presenting themselves to me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's really hard. That has been very hard for me to put up my boundaries and say, "No, this is the thing that I wanna do. This is the thing that is speaking to me, and I'm gonna do this thing."
Yeah.
Not okay, but there's all these people out here. And I still struggle with that with the epigenetics
Of
because
course.
you can serve so many people, but I
Yeah.
really, really am trying to focus on using the epigenetics to support couples wanting to get pregnant.
Yeah. And I think what I love is the journey that we all go through. I hate the J
Mhm.
word, but I do love the journey
Yeah,
because, like, I a lot of the people, a lot of the guests that I have on this podcast, they are people who've done the kind of expansive thing, and then they've refined, but they were using like the wrong tools or not everything, and then they've gone on a little personal thing, like the universe self corrects us and
exactly.
says, actually, this is
No.
where you need to exist. Right?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, it tends to
No,
just
no.
go no, and also no, and then like puts you back on the path. And I love it because there's so many needs out there that need to be met. There's so many things that you don't even think about, and then you get into a situation where you're like, oh, hang on a second. So the this kind of preconception angle, people aren't thinking about it. People think
Right.
about it like, and so just give us the time scale. Like, how long before we want to be pregnant do we need to be thinking about being pregnant, in your view?
Optimally, I think 6 months is great. Um, at the least 3 months,
Yeah.
because I'm not just working with women, I'm working
Yeah.
with their male partners, and that is
Sorry.
something that
So just say that again.
I know.
How many people are involved in bringing a child into
There
the
are
world?
2 people
Two
involved
people.
in the
Yes.
tango, and it's not just about the tango itself, it's
No.
about at least the 3 months for a male, the 3 months preceding conception, and all of the amazing things that we can do to optimize male health, not even just talking about, you know, sperm quality, motility, and quantity, but we're talking about all these other aspects that we're learning about epigenetics, about
Mm.
transgenerational inheritance. We're talking about all of these amazing things that we can do and all of this knowledge that we have. And I think that it's our responsibility to take that knowledge and act on it.
Mm.
And it's hard. And it's hard to say, you know, dude, you need to go do X, Y, and Z when it's your female partner who's the one who's going to get pregnant. And yeah, it is slowly coming into standard medical care, but I don't not fast enough for me. I'm impatient. I want to do this now. I'm going to start helping men understand the importance of their role in conception and
Mhm.
pregnancy and the foundations of your child's health for the rest of their life.
Mm.
It's not just the woman. It's not
Mhm.
just her responsibility or her
Mm.
blame. Let's
Mhm.
shift it off of the woman and onto the couple, the responsibility onto the couple.
Yeah. And I think, and I love your passion about it because it is somewhat easy to think, the fertility element is kind of partly down to the man, because that's kind of like, as you were mentioning, the sperm motility and quality and all that kind of stuff. But realistically, that's half the DNA of
Yeah,
the human being that's being born. So there's such a, and so when we're speaking, let's just put some terminology on it. We've got genetics, which is the DNA stuff, but everything that we talk about, do you want to give us the epigenetics definition? Do you want to just define that for our listeners, just in case they need it?
so yeah, so we have our genetics. We have basically our code. That's the thing that is set in place. We can't change it. And then we have how our genes interact with the environment to actually uh, I have a harder time with like the actual translation into everyday language of
Everyday
this, but
normalness. Yeah.
right, it's still a little difficult for me.
Mm.
But how the environment works with our genes to express or to come into play some sort of phenotype, and
Yeah.
the phenotype is going to be like how you actually how those genes come into play for you given your environment.
Yeah.
Is that kind
Yeah.
of how you
Yeah. And so I normally say things like, there are certain things that are set in stone, eye color, height, they're
right?
fairly steady state, but there's a whole host of variables in terms of how things are expressed. And the interface with expressing genes expressing is all of the lifestyle factors. And I think people still are sort of stuck in the kind of original, oh, this gene codes for this thing.
Right.
It's now being discovered in science that literally almost every gene is encoding for everything. It is a system that interweaves in and of itself.
Exactly.
But the reality, and you mentioned my catchphrase of everything matters, because when we're talking about the leading causes of illness, we're talking about everything that can be modified by lifestyle factors. And at that point, we're in we have so much ability to transform the way this genetic blueprint is kind of inbuilt in terms of its vitality. And maybe not my eye color is ever going to change, but
Right.
the way my energy lives inside my system absolutely can. And when
Yeah,
we're talking about
exactly.
kiddies and we're talking about the building of the genetic blueprint, like that's, yes, you've got like a set of genes that are just going to combine as conception's happening. But there's so much else going on. There's the
There's
mother's
so much more.
nervous system. There's so much stuff.
Oh my gosh. Even
Mhm.
even these things that you wouldn't even think about that I don't think we figured out the mechanisms for, but take for example the father's activity level, whether or not they exercise regularly.
Mhm.
That imprints somehow onto the child and increases their likelihood of also exercising. Now, that has nothing to do with, zinc cofactors and vitamin D levels. That I don't think we have an answer for that yet, but it is consistently demonstrated and it is powerful and valuable. So,
Mm.
looking at those types of factors, how a man can epigenetically improve the existence of his child,
Mhm.
it's just fascinating,
Mhm. Mm. And I think if it was obvious to fathers that they are literally influencing the health of their 18-year-old son by
right?
what they do in the 6 months before they choose to conceive, I think people would probably show up differently.
I think so too. And I
Yeah,
think understanding that, you're also building healthy habits in those 6 months, year, 3 months, whatever time you realistically have to give
yeah.
to this.
Mhm.
And you are role modeling.
Mhm.
So it's not just like the innate, it's not the genetics, it's not the nutrition, it's not just those kind of more physical, tangible things.
Mhm.
It's the relationship that you're building, it's the intentionality that you're giving
Mhm.
to your child before they're even born. Like that's
Mhm.
incredible. I feel so honored and grateful that we were able to do that for our son before he was even born. And
Yeah.
that's amazing. You can't give a kid much better than that. Just setting up their foundations for the rest of their life.
Yeah. Yeah. So how does it look? What does it look like then? So, we've mentioned like epigenetics and we're kind of talking above the level of everything. What I love about the work that people like you and I do is that we can almost completely reveal our model because the whole thing
Yeah.
is it's precision specific to your DNA. So
Yeah.
like you still can't guess at it because so tell us what you do. What's the process look like to work with you? Because I love this and I feel like anybody who's listening who's thinking, oh, maybe children will automatically be like, oh, there's something here I can do. So
Yeah.
how does it look like? What happens?
Well, first of all, I love that. Like we have so much more control than we feel we have in this society, in
Mm.
the way that our culture does health right now. We have so much more power
Right.
than people want to give us credit for.
Right.
Um, so there's a couple different ways that we can move through working with a client, and I definitely prefer the epigenetics approach.
Hmm.
Getting that blueprint first of both couples
Yeah.
so that we can work with both people in the couple to truly optimize their health.
Hmm.
Um, but we don't 100% need it. We know
Mm.
certain, at least within, so on the female side, we have very specific things that we know are important for creating a positive environment for implantation of a fertilized egg. We
Hmm.
know, like scientifically, we know very specific things that need to happen. um, I focus a lot on inflammation, and inflammation. I mean, that's kind of becoming like a buzzword, and it's also so important. It's the foundation of so many different things.
Mm.
So things that influence inflammation: stress, sleep, sugar regulation. So looking at like we can look at your genetics for risk for insulin resistance. That's a huge one. We can look at micronutrients and make sure that you don't have any deficiencies coming into a pregnancy. We can look at the different forms of supplementation. One of the things I knew going into my pregnancy was that I don't convert beta carotene into vitamin A very efficiently,
Neither.
right? I don't think I've really seen any reports that, right? Okay, okay. So I think a lot of people,
I think a lot of people. I think we can definitely say that a lot of people.
yeah, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, if you have someone who's on a specialty diet, if they're a vegetarian or they're
Yeah.
vegan,
Mhm.
then that is a very crucial thing to know
Mhm.
going into a pregnancy. If you can't, like, vitamin A is so important for the development of a growing child in utero. So knowing that that is a challenge and finding ways to optimize that and still be able to stay within your dietary pattern. Like that is so cool. I love that. And other
Yes.
micronutrients, there's the whole folate thing
Yeah.
that, I think that you talked with C. McDermott about NTHFR a lot and
Yeah.
methylation, and that is so crucial in pregnancy. And I haven't listened to the whole thing yet, so I don't know if you
Mm.
talked about folic acid, but folic acid in pregnancy is complicated.
Yes.
So we need
Yeah, and I love that you just said that because there are so many blanket statements out there
mm,
of like
yes,
folic acid universally in pregnancy is good. Folic
right.
acid universally in pregnancy is terrible. I was at a conference the other day and somebody went, it's the folic acid that you're taking that leads to autism. Y- d-
Yeah.
And I was sitting in the front row and I like was gripping the table thinking, maybe we need some specificity here because the whole
Yes,
thing is this is bio individual. For some women,
yes,
folic acid is exactly fine. It's exactly what they need and it's great. For some people, it's not the right form of that vitamin and we need to think
exactly.
about it. But it's not this leads to this. And what I really adore about some of this stuff is and you just mentioned it, and just to give our listeners a little bit of specificity in that vitamin A thing, there are so many ways to skin a cat when it comes to human health. There's so many ways you can do things, providing you know what you're trying to do to the system. And so just to be like super specific, vitamin A, beta carotene, we're talking about carrots. Like carrots, there's a thing in carrots which can be made into the retinol that we actually need, and it's vital. But I can't get it from carrots. You can't get it from carrots. No DNA profile I've ever seen can get it from
Right?
carrots. The only person I suspect can is somebody like Rich Roll, who can just
Yeah.
be vegan and still do all the things he does. Because I'm
Yep.
like, he has to not have that set of SNPs.
Right.
So like I know that I either need to eat liver, tons of vitamin A in liver, or supplement with non-beta carotene derived vitamin A. Like these are
Exactly.
just the obvious things. But to know that is such a privilege because I
Right.
get to completely know exactly what I'm doing with my supplementation regime or my diet, or I know if I'm falling down on the liver, which happens often because I hate liver.
I
Like
know.
um
It's hard.
I need to do other work and then I forget and then I think, oh, it's that thing. So what we're talking about is the ability to not just design your supplement regimen with that level of specificity, but these genetic reports that we look at, we can design literally everything about your
So
life.
many things.
Yeah.
So many things. Your
Yeah.
sleep. What
Yes.
exercise is best? What type of exercise is best for you?
Yes.
I think one of the more powerful things that I've discovered personally and with
Mhm.
clients from that report is the environmental response piece,
Love that. Yeah.
and that is, that's a whole beast unto itself, and it's I personally, it's been, challenging, and
Mhm.
even because I have the environmental science background. I mean, and
Yes, of
that was a
course.
a huge piece of
Right.
it. It's like the interaction between the environment and
Yeah.
human health, um, and it's still really difficult to make that full transition away from products that are throwing up obstacles to our optimal health. And
Yeah.
that is like a lifelong process, I think,
Mm.
and one that I
Mhm.
really like to support people in beginning.
Mm.
Um, so that is a huge piece of how I work with clients because
Mm.
we have all of the chemicals in our environment that are affecting our reproductive health.
Yeah.
and it's affecting sperm quality and sperm health. Um, Not to mention, all of the endocrine disruptors in pregnancy and in young childhood. And it is a big world out there, and there are a lot of things that are throwing up obstacles in our way, and there are a lot of things that we can do to support our health
Hmm.
despite them.
Hmm.
And I think
And I,
epigenetics is really
mm,
a powerful tool in helping us there.
it absolutely is. And I think the reason I have the goal, if you like, to say everything matters is because I also have the tool of the epigenetics to say, yes, but in what ratio and what importance do I need to stack the everything matters for
Right.
this specific client
Yeah.
sitting in front of
Yeah.
me? And so this is what we're talking about. We're not trying to make it feel obstructive and really complicated for clients. It's like, because you have to think about all these things,
Yeah.
why don't you actually do the testing which shows you the precise things that you need to think about? Because there will
Right.
be people who need to worry less about certain environmental things or certain even chemical things. Like I'm quite lucky I've got really rapid metabolism in some areas. It's like
Nice.
my body doesn't care about that.
Yeah.
Um,
That's awesome.
but it really cares about some other things. So I'm
Yeah.
like, okay,
Exactly.
so
Yeah.
my priority list is taking these out of my world, but this one I can be a little less micro focused on. And
Right.
it just means that, because as you mentioned earlier, my whole thing is about like the nervous system and stress and all of those additional factors. This stuff can be an additional stress if you're not doing it in a
Yes.
precise, supported way with
Yep.
people, like with someone saying, this is exactly how to do it. Because if you just say to clients, everything matters, good luck, it's like,
Yeah.
and we would never do that. But what I love with the kind of work that you're doing is it feels like you're the champion of their health and their health for themselves as they're trying to bring new life into the world.
Exactly. I'm your guide. I can't climb that mountain for you, but I can walk the path beside you. And
Mm,
I am. I am also in that space trying to optimize my health in a realistic and sustainable way
yeah,
for me and my family.
yeah,
And your path is going to look a little different,
yeah.
and you're going to have different obstacles, and you're going to have different strengths, and you're going to
Mm,
have different ways um, in which we can really focus on your
mm,
genetics and
mm,
creating an optimal path for you.
mm,
And it's so much fun. I love it. And
mm,
I do, the epigenetics is amazing, and the foundational health piece is so important. And also, so is the advocacy and the navigation piece.
mm,
I don't know enough about your path through diagnosis and management, but mine was probably the typical, it took 5 6 years to get a diagnosis. I
mm,
saw 5 different conventional practitioners, before I even came into the functional medicine space. Um, and I so I have an essay coming out in a book collaboration at the beginning of the year, and I'm very excited about it. And in that essay, I coined the term passenger syndrome. And I'm sure you're very familiar with this, and you're very experienced with this with yourself and your clients. But it's this idea that um, we are not an active participant in our own healthcare, that we are deferring the information and the decision making to our care team. And I struggled with this for a very long time, just accepting this is the medication that you're going to be on. If you're going to be on it for the rest of your life,
mm,
it's going to increase your risk for going blind. So we're going to do all of these tests every quarter, and we're never really going to tell you what they mean or what this means for the long term. We're just going to Oh, and if you ask questions, we're gonna label you difficult, and
mm.
we're gonna maybe mock you a little bit, depending on your provider.
Yeah. Who would have thought you would want to know more about your own health
Right?
condition? Like,
Yeah. I had some less than stellar experiences with a couple providers. Um, and coming into this functional medicine, into the precision health space, it really helped me find a voice for myself.
mhm,
It gave me more information, yes, but it also gave me the confidence to ask questions and to
mm,
push back a little bit on my
mm,
providers, and
mm,
really make sure that I found relationships that were mutually beneficial,
mhm,
that stepped out of this hierarchical
Mhm.
setting and allowed me to become an active participant in my own healthcare. And that
Mhm.
is vitally important to me, almost equally as important as all of the physical stuff that we're doing with clients, but
Mhm.
really giving people, empowering them to take back control of their own health. And
Mhm.
that is just a huge part of what I am doing and what
Mm.
I am helping others achieve.
Mm.
Little soapbox
I
there.
I love people who get on soapboxes because the only people who really get on this soapbox are the people who've been hurt by the system.
Yep,
But if enough people get on enough soapboxes, we will change the system.
yep,
And I don't know that we'll change it from the inside, which is why people like you and I and what we're doing here and lots of people around Austin set up systems outside the system to create alternatives, to create popular and more widely known alternatives so that people really understand that that isn't just because it's the way we've always done it doesn't mean it was ever the right way.
right.
And my listeners will know kind of my story, but I was kind of lucky in a way that I didn't get a terrible label really early on, or even 5 years in. And I didn't do the medication thing. I didn't have this is what's going to happen to your body in quite the same way. I did have a decade of kind of misdiagnosis, no diagnosis.
Yeah, the limbo phase.
Well, it was so strange because it was very much people telling me exactly what I was feeling without asking me what I was
Mm,
feeling and telling me that I had a mental health problem, that I was doing this to myself
yep,
for a decade, which is the worst form of kind of gaslighting because you
yeah,
have that white coat syndrome of people in authority who you trust and you're like, really, am I? And this is my big journey through all of this. It's like how to find my own sovereignty in amongst people telling me that I wasn't telling the truth for a decade.
yep,
um but then when I got the diagnoses, they then kind of went into like, here's the radical solution. We're going to put a peg into your stomach, which is essentially a tube to tube feed me directly into my stomach. And I cannot believe we said yes. Like I still can't believe that in the context of the diagnosis that I had, which is a connective tissue disorder, which is basically like your tissues are kind of not, they don't have a lot of integrity. In their wisdom, the doctor's wisdom, and then my kind of blind faith, it was
yeah.
like, yeah, this is the right thing to do. Just shove a tube into my abdomen. That makes total sense. And it of course went terribly wrong. Um, Terribly wrong. And it got infected really quickly and it had to come out. And it was just like I've never really spoken to a doctor since. And that was 2012. So this is
Wow.
a decade now, beyond it. But the interesting thing for me is that I'm probably still processing the consequences of having been through that scenario with the medical profession. And I was in the kind of spiritual inner world before I even got sick. So I had awareness of work and stuff. And then I did all the nutrition and all of the stuff that I've done. And I kind of have so many certifications and
Yeah.
things. And still, I have this kind of hangover from that process that I went through. And that legacy is something that I don't believe anyone should have to deal with. That
Yeah,
kind of I can't trust myself energy
yeah,
that comes up at times still within me, even though like now I do what I do. It's like, and I feel like your passion for advocacy through this, it's so important because we know that we could have fought and probably should have fought, although I don't really do shoulds and regrets, but you know what
yeah.
I mean? There was another way. We didn't get the chance. And I love that you give your clients and people that you're working with, and then everyone these kind of platforms and this book that you're part of a collaboration on and the essay that you've written. It's like, you get to fight. It's your body. You get to
Yeah.
say no.
Similarly, I will say that so when I went into my pregnancy, I was very on one side of the spectrum. I was very pro, you know, midwifery. I'm going to deliver in a birthing center. This is what the evidence says on birthing positions and X, Y, and Z. And I was like, borderline militant on, like we're going to be over here in the alternative space. That's it. There are no other options. And then I ended up delivering in the hospital. I had
Mm.
to be induced, and it was an amazing experience. It was very healing.
Mm.
It really helped me process. potentially some trauma from working as a labor and delivery nurse and
Yeah.
working in an environment that didn't match my own personal values.
Yeah.
Um, this delivery by a midwife in a conventional hospital, it
Mhm.
was perfect. It was beautiful.
Mm.
It was still
Mm.
unmedicated. I still got all of the things. I still got the support,
Mm.
and it really helped recenter me. So,
Mm.
yes, this side over here is so important. Having access to midwives and doulas and that really preventative based holistic care is
Mhm.
so vital.
Mm.
And also, it's really necessary to have this other space over here, to have well trained obstetricians, gynecologists,
Mhm.
and their support people like midwives who are trained to work in the hospital. Like
Yeah.
that side is vital.
Mhm.
And so I like with the complex systems approach,
Mhm.
it helped me remove judgment
Yes.
based on an
Yeah.
intervention.
Yeah.
So, yes, let's try to do the holistic approach
Mhm.
and also maybe you need these other things over here.
Mhm.
Um, but we're going to approach it with full informed consent. We're going to know
Yes.
exactly what it is. We're going to know what the
Mhm.
risks are, and we're going to know what the alternatives are. And we're
Mhm.
going to learn how to ask questions of your provider. We're
Mhm.
going to learn how to build relationships with your provider instead of
Mhm.
it just being this negative, tense pushback space.
Yeah.
Um, because I was in remission from lupus,
Mm.
I worked with a midwife, and I also um, opted to do care with a maternal fetal medicine specialist, an
Mhm.
MFM, just because this is a weird space. We don't
Mm.
know the data on pregnancies in
Yeah.
remission.
Yeah.
We have lots of scary data on active lupus,
Mhm.
and that was kind of always in the back
Of
here.
course.
But
Yeah. Yeah.
so I had one appointment, and this is again at the height of the pandemic. So
Mm.
doctors are like, I'm in the room, I've gotten my ultrasound, and they're like, your doctor's going to call you on your cell phone from the other room. Okay,
Oh God.
that's weird. So I get on the phone with this doctor, and he says, without even saying hi, without even like talking about my background, is like, I advocate for you to deliver in the hospital at 37 weeks induction. Um, Excuse me? Have you looked at my labs? Do you know I'm in remission? Do you know I'm off all of my medications? Do you know anything about me as a human, or are you just looking at the population-based algorithms? Because I'm an individual. I am my own
Mm.
person, and you need
Mm.
to look at me as an individual and what is happening in my body.
Mhm.
Maybe let's run some tests.
Mm.
He was not open to any of that. He was more concerned with the liability, and so I said bye. And I found someone else
Of
who would work with
course.
me and who
Yeah.
would trust me and who said, okay, cool. Let's just monitor. Let's see what happens.
Yeah. And I just want to say for all our listeners, like, you don't need to know the answers to these questions. If you're not Abby, who like understands what the statistics are and understands when the doctor is presenting her with a fait accompli, this is what's happening, knows why he's getting to that. But every time a doctor presents you with an absolute without an explanation,
Yeah.
you get to say why, and or I'm going to get a second opinion, because you have the right to know the reason behind their rationale, and maybe that rationale is sound. But if it is sound, they should be able to tell you exactly what it is. There should be no gray area statement of like, I'm going to make you do something which is totally unnatural, induction at 37 weeks.
Yeah.
What? Like, that makes no freaking sense.
No.
um and you get to ask the question. And I don't care how annoyed your consultants get. I really
Yeah.
don't. Like, if they don't have time,
It's your
great, they're
right.
not your
It's your
doctor. Yeah.
basic right.
Yeah.
And hopefully, you can find a care team that will support you and but if you can't, break up with them. That is your right. You are not stuck with a doctor just because
Yeah.
they take your insurance. And
Mhm.
and that is hard for a lot of people.
It's so hard. I've only just realized it now, being in the US. It's like, in the
Yeah.
UK, you kind of like you
You're kind of stuck.
you kind of you are, but you're not. Like
Yeah.
you can choose. I mean, people move to be nearer to a hospital where they want to give birth because it becomes like
Wow.
location dependent. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just what people do. But here, like if it's out of provider or all the things, and I'm like, this is just too complicated.
Yeah.
Um, but the other thing to say is, I loved what you said earlier. It's like, what would the world be like if we had out of hospital midwives and doulas and birthing centers and natural staff, but also the people who were in the hospital knew and had faith in that outside of hospital thing, because then the two
Yep.
could actually talk to one another without it being this kind of fight. Because it does feel like, I mean, I have never given birth, I have never been pregnant, but it does feel like if I choose this route of like more natural, more like,
You get a
you know,
label.
you get a label of like being anti-medicine, and it's
Yeah.
just like, no, so it's
Especially with
hard.
the statistics on midwifery care are incredible.
Mm.
If you pregnancy and birth is normal.
Like our bodies are actually built to do
They're
this
built to
thing.
do it. And most pregnancies can happen without medical intervention. And if your listeners take anything away from that, I just want you to know pregnancy is normal.
Yeah, we've got a
Pregnancy
pregnant
is
woman here at
normal.
work, and like people were
Oh
saying, "Oh,
my
do you need to sit down?" I was like, "She's pregnant. She's not disabled."
God.
Like,
It's just, oh man. Yes. So, anyone wanting to become pregnant, who is pregnant, I highly recommend you read Ina May Gardner's. Oh gosh, which one is it? I think it's out on loan right now. But she has this whole book of just stories of normal birth,
yeah,
just normal, uncomplicated, unmedicated, unassisted. Well, unassisted as in like no medical
no
intervention.
medical intervention. Somebody
And
rubbing your back and helping you out.
that's the norm. That is the norm. That's my other soapbox.
Yeah.
I have
And it
many.
right. But it is like it, and I've spoken to at least one other podcast guest about this, but pregnancy becomes medicalized from the moment you're pregnant. Like you have to
Yeah,
take a pregnancy test, you go and see a doctor, you then have to schedule all your scans. And I'm just going to say, I've just said had to. You absolutely don't have to do
you don't have to
any
do
of
any of
that.
that.
No. And
You can
so
decline. You can decline it all.
I
I don't
think people don't
necessarily
know
recommend that,
that.
but yeah.
But I think people don't know that. I think people, when they get told, particularly older pregnant ladies, when they have the,
Ugh,
oh my God, you're a high risk pregnancy because of your age, which is like what, 38? And then you're automatically
35.
high risk. Is it, oh, you're kidding
It's
me.
35.
That's ridiculous.
So I delivered at a month before my 35th birthday.
Hmm.
And so if I had gotten pregnant a month later,
You'd have been high risk
my my pregnancy care, had I been, in a normal care setting, would have changed drastically.
dramatically. Yeah. And
Isn't
it
that
is
crazy?
many more scans, many more like everything's. And
Yeah,
it's just like, for a month. And I know they have to make the cutoff somewhere, but to be honest, it
right.
should be 40. It shouldn't be any earlier than 40, if at
Well,
all.
and so I think that the science does show that there are changes that happen in that 35 to 40 window, which is why I think that it's so important, and that this is the age bracket that I am most excited to work with. It
Yeah.
is those advanced maternal age,
Older
used to be
mothers.
called geriatric pregnancies. Um, Terrible, right? This is the age that I am most excited to work with, because
Yeah.
there is so much more unlearning that can happen here.
Mm.
And it's also why I like some of the tools like the epigenetic age testing.
Mhm, mm.
We can show, right? Because it's not just your chronological age, it's your
Mm.
biological age. And
Mhm,
this is a kind of new science, new
mhm,
testing, but it's so fascinating. We can
mm,
look not only at your biological age, but we can look at the age of your immune system, and we
mhm,
can look at your pace of aging.
mhm,
And those are all such cool tools. I don't necessarily implement them all the time, but if
mhm,
someone is interested, I fully support this because I think it is so fascinating. So
mhm,
we can do a baseline, we can make our lifestyle and behavioral changes, and then
mhm,
we can go back and we can show how this has positively affected your biological aging. We can
mhm,
actually set the clock back. We can
mhm.
decrease the rate at which you're aging. I think
Yeah.
that is so cool and so
Hmm.
valuable. And it's just
Mm.
so interesting from a like totally nerdy
From a
perspective.
totally geek perspective. No, and I'm totally with you on that. And also, I feel like even if you don't fully get the science, which I don't fully get the science, I used to work with a lab in London, and I texted them the other day and I was like, I need the white paper on all of the things that you're testing. And he got back to me, he's like, that's 20 million positions, Victoria. And I'm like, maybe not all of those things. Yeah, it's a lot. Like we just have the printout report and we're like, oh, this is interesting, geeky information. And it's actually a lot of stuff.
Right.
But it really is that kind of perspective. Like, if nothing else shows your clients that the lifestyle factors affect everything, it is just change a load of stuff. You don't even need to change supplementation or medication. You can just
Yeah.
change lifestyle stuff, and you
Yep.
can both reverse your actual biological age, but also slow the rate of aging. And when you show someone that, and all you've done is like perfected their precision diet, change their exercise routine and
Get
their
them to
sleep
sleep
habits.
more.
Yeah,
Oh my
yes,
God.
just
I
sleep.
think sleep, I mean, nutrition, movement, those are very important.
Yeah,
I don't think we give sleep enough credit,
we don't. No,
especially in our culture.
right. Where, and not just sleep in terms of duration, but
Right.
timing in the day.
Timing and quality. And I mean, I see your aura ring.
Mirroring, yeah.
I
Hmm.
mean, it's been so fascinating. I can go to bed maybe 15 minutes earlier and just like increase my deep sleep by almost double it. It's
Yeah.
insane.
Well, and the science behind that is really, it's like people don't understand that you don't just phase shift everything forwards. So
Right.
it's not like if you just go to bed 2 hours later, you're going to have exactly the same stages of sleep as if you'd gone to bed 2 hours earlier. And this is great because, like, when I was, I don't know, 13, my mom started getting into like Chinese medicine and the
Mm.
energy medicine stuff. And she had this phrase, the 2 hours before bed are worth 4 hours afterwards. And I was like,
Ooh, I love
you
that.
just, I know it's great, isn't it? It's like you just want, and as a teenager, you just
You
want
just
me
want
to
me
go
to
to
go to
bed
bed
earlier.
earlier.
Right. Although, and teenagers, they shouldn't. Teenagers have
Right.
a phase, like literally have a phase shifted later.
Yeah.
But I was just like, nah. Now science definitely proves that those 2 hours before midnight, if you get to bed, you actually have the right deep sleep because you're
Yeah.
chronologically shifted with the universe and
Right,
you
because your
don't
sleep
make it up.
architecture, it
Right.
changes after
Yes.
basically around midnight. We get more deep sleep in that first part of the night. We get
Yeah.
more REM sleep. So if you go to bed after midnight, you are missing out on vital and important deep sleep, that physically restorative sleep.
Yes.
So important, especially, in terms of inflammation,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Drives blood sugar. It drives blood sugar dysregulation, not
Mm-hmm.
sleeping. It
Mm-hmm.
drives inflammation in general. And
Mm-hmm.
inflammation in itself can make the uterus inhospitable to a fertilized egg.
100%.
That I didn't touch on that earlier, but that is why inflammation is so crucial. It's like the linchpin in conception.
Mm-hmm.
So looking at blood sugar, if we can use continuous glucose monitoring and we
Mm-hmm.
can look at the foods that are causing you spikes,
Mm-hmm.
even if you're within a normal range, if
Mm-hmm.
you're spiking all over
Yes.
the place,
Work.
then that's work. It's a negative effect on your body. It's impacting all your systems.
Mm-hmm.
Like we need to pay more attention, and not just in people who are pre-diabetic or diabetic or who have other metabolic disturbances, but
Mm.
everyone.
Yeah.
Anyone benefits from
Yeah.
continuous glucose monitoring. This is kind of
Yes.
one of the things that I'm diving into right now, and I
I
think
love it.
it's so fascinating
Mm.
because
And just out of interest for our listeners, what CGM are you using? Which tech are you
um
using?
so I love Dexcom.
Hmm.
It's more expensive, so I typically do Freestyle Libre. That's the one that I recommend.
Yeah.
And there's so many companies out there right now. There's
Hmm.
Vary and NutriSense and Levels, and they all have kind of like a membership where you can get a glucose monitor, and then they have an associated app that helps you interpret the information. You can
Yeah.
put in your diet, your exercise, and all of that stuff, and you can see in real time
Hmm.
how these things are negatively or positively impacting your blood glucose.
Yeah.
I
And
think
what I
that
love
is
is that like these are
huge.
direct to consumer now. So
Yeah,
Levels, we had a guy from Levels here the other day, January AI, they all do it and they are
yeah,
direct to consumer. And you don't need to pay someone like us to do this stuff. You can
yeah.
start yourself at home just understanding. So, and also the sleep thing. I had my bloods drawn last week. I had a terrible night's sleep the day before I got my
Yeah.
bloods drawn.
Right.
My glucose was high, my insulin was high. It was like noticeable. And I don't eat masses of carbs or anything like that. It was legitimately, I
Crazy,
had
right?
trashy sleep and my bloods were wrecked. And it's
Yep.
like, that's one night and I will pull that back. And I can tell from the longer term metrics that I'm actually fine. But that over time, consistently,
Yeah.
will alter the health of my vehicle.
I love that. Yep, exactly.
Mm.
So there's so many amazing tools that we have access to now.
Mm.
And they are all great and they are all wonderful, but I think that the most impactful tool is our ability to coach and support clients, to help with their accountability, to listen to them, actually listen and hear them. I think that is one of the best things that we can do as coaches is just understand where they're coming from
Yeah.
and meet them where they're at,
Yeah.
make small, simple shifts that
Mhm.
are going to last over, that actually, help them improve their lifestyles. It's overlooked, and I think that there are a lot of people coming into this space, which is awesome. And also, I think there are a lot of people who um, maybe need some more coaching on how to coach.
I love that you said that.
Yeah,
I totally agree. And
yeah,
I love that we are kind of coming to the close of our time and that's where we've ended because we spent a long time talking about the fancy pants techniques and
yeah.
like tech and wizardry, all of which is important. And there's the most important thing, and I say this to my students in the academy, and I'm really championing it here at Kuya because I'm very much like we could get lost in the weeds of being technical,
Yeah.
but the humaning element, and which is why I love that our community is our foundation here because it's actually healing to be in community. And from a coach perspective, I I probably when I get someone coming in and I've got their genomics reports, I know they've got all of the videos that they can tell them exactly what
Hmm.
they do. So I just give them access to that. And I'm like, these are the important things. Human with me, because like this bit here, this dynamic, this who we are and how we're sharing, this is the bit that only I can do. You
Yeah.
can geek out on your data later. This is kind of this is the touch point, the lodestone of healing. It's
Yeah.
being a co-regulated nervous system with another nervous system.
Yep. And it's so important. And I think that, as a nurse, I have a very unique set of skills.
Yeah.
I have access to the information. I know how to read the research and try to help translate that. And that's all great. But if I can't connect with my clients, if I can't build that rapport, if I
Mm-hmm.
can't understand the realities of their day to day, I'm not going to get anywhere. And it's just a waste of everybody's time. So it is that human
Especially,
element.
yeah, and especially at this delicate
Yeah,
time of contemplating bringing new life into the world. I
exactly.
get why it's one of the scariest things that particularly women do. I think they have it's their bodies going through a massive transition. And I really love that you're kind of deciding to niche into this area of preconception and that those moments before deciding to do the thing and as you're kind of like preparing because
So
it feels
scary.
like right it's the scariest thing and they have like a wing woman in their corner
Yeah, yeah.
doing the process with them, which is awesome. Like we're supposed to exist in tribes, and I think we've forgotten that somewhat.
We have.
Mm. Yeah.
That
Oh, thank you so much for chatting to me today, Abby. Is there
was so
anything else we
fun.
haven't touched on? Is there anything else you want to share with my listeners? I will put your website details and everything that people need in the show notes. Is there any other topics or things that you want to say just before we wrap up for today?
I want your clients to know, and they probably already know this, but it bears repeating that they have the power to take back control of their own health. They can do it on their own, but it's really beneficial to work with someone like you or someone like me who's been there, who's already done the trial and error, who can really help guide them and just make this process more efficient,
Mm,
and just more joyful, I think,
mm,
bringing
mm,
that joy piece into it and connecting
mm,
with others.
mm. I
But you
love
got
that.
this. Yeah, you
Yeah.
got this.
Yes. Oh, thank you so much for spending time with me today, Abby.
I
I really
appreciate it
appreciate
so
it.
much. So fun.
Thanks so much to Abby Hand for joining me. And when you're listening to this, we should have some more links, both to her website and hopefully to the book. Although if not yet, please look out for it and we will update you all in the new year when it is released. Abby has a very unique niche in Austin, Texas, but she does work virtually with people. So if you have any interest in looking into this preconception and conception care as a whole family with her, then do check the show notes now, and all of the information that you need will be there. If you would like to know more about the Apeiron Academy and Epigenetic Coach training, that too is in the show notes. And if you would like to join us at the Unveil community, you are more than welcome to do so now by going to unveilcommunity.com. And finally, just to say, if you are in Austin, Texas, do head on down to Kuya if you would like to experience the community vibes that I was talking about with Abby in this podcast. We also have our all-new medical program, which is now open and able to be applied for by you wherever you are in the world. So if that's of interest, check out kuya.life. And again, all of those links and the links to find Abby, all the places on the interwebs, will be in the show notes. All that's left to say is that if you got anything out of today's episode, please like, subscribe, and share with a friend. And I will be with you next time here on the Unveil podcast.